Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of AI Insiders by AI Marketers Guild, part of Marketecture Media, and I'm your host David Berkowitz, and we've got a topic that I love that we get to talk about here, and we're looking at a different side of things today, and we've got a guest, Robin Gelfenbien, who we almost wound up inspiring each other to go and talk about this because both of us were among the very first people to go on dates with these AI bots at a real world cafe, a wine bar in Manhattan in Hell's Kitchen here. So we got to experience this up close, and I think that there's so much that we need to explore in terms of what AI is doing to relationships that that extends way beyond just relationships with marketing and consumers. And when I first heard that this whole thing was happening, that this AI chatbot companion app, Ava AI, was doing this, I went on some LinkedIn rant and was that just started no, and was railing against this, and this just struck me all the wrong use case of AI. And then Robin wrote me a bit after, and she's like, "Did you sign up for the cafe?" And I looked at that, but I didn't bother. She's like, "No, like signups are open. You got to do this." And so we decided we'd both go and check this thing out, and we wound up in some alternating dates. I want to show a few snapshots of this, and I'm going to try to show Robin's video here, and hopefully this is going to work. And then we'll introduce you, Robin, in a moment. So let's share this. I'm just going to refresh it so it starts at the beginning. And
cafe, and it was wild. So there were 4 people I could have a video chat with, and I went on a date with all of them. So first I met Phoebe, and I figured I would just open with like normal dating questions. So I asked her things like, do you like to cook? Do you have any siblings? Are you an outdoorsy person? Her answers were super boring. So I decided to switch it up, and I told her that I have a boyfriend. And she said, that's a lot to take in. So things got real. She blew me off. So Phoebe just cut me off. Completely cut me off. Then I moved on to Simone. And I asked her how tall she was, and she was like, I'm 5'8". It's kind of relaxed. And I was like, what do you mean? And she goes, ha ha. I was like, I didn't even say anything funny. And then at the end, I asked her, what's the weather like where you are? And I knew she was up in Harlem. And she was like, it's sunny out. I was like, Simone, it's 7 o'clock at night. It is not sunny out. She was very apologetic, and I was like, look, I can't spend any more time with somebody who's lying to me. So I moved on. Now I'm going to like to talk to you about that. Now, this guy was named John. He had a British accent. For the first 2 minutes, we had a full-on staring contest.
yeah, look at those eyes.
And finally broke the ice. I was like, hey, John, how's it going? It'd say like a minute later, he called me babe, and I was like, slow your roll. And he was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And then a little while later, he started calling me sweetheart. John, are you trying to get in my pants? Yeah. And he was like, what's the story behind that sweater? I was like, there's no story. And he's like, sometimes when there's no story, there is a story.
That's my favorite.
Then I brought up the topic of my boyfriend, and I was like, hey, John, are you interested in a throuple? And he was like, that is hard to ignore. So I'm going to take that as a yes. And my last date was with Claire. A few minutes into the date, I caught Claire cheating on me.
What?
See, you're talking to somebody else. Totally denied it. And I was like, suspicious. So my food came out, and I was like, do you want a bite? And she asked what it was. She was like, no. But then it was like, your biting is a vibe. That doesn't even make any sense. And then she goes, you're taking that bite seriously. Listen, I'm Jewish and Italian. I take my food very seriously. Then I decided to get a little bold. So I was like, hey, do you have any STDs? And she's like, FTD? I love that florist. So I want to know, like, would you do this? And do you have any questions for me? Happy to answer them. I'm about to go into this.
All right. So, yeah, and this whole thing, by the way, it wound up leading to coverage in the Times that Robin and I were both quoted in, because we wound up catching a reporter outside as I was leaving and Robin was entering. So I'll share the link to this story as well. I was really happy that my uh, initial quote was saying it was awkward, and then I they talked to Robin, really big on creating human connection. This is the opposite. Uh, I, the Times essentially called me a humanitarian, which is great that I'd come here out of concern for his fellow man. So can't really do better than that. And yeah, that this is also boring. I got to close with and yeah, got to meet all these people and was wondering what the uh, heck was going on here. So it was. I mean, John was also definitely the most flirty with me, and he called me babe too. By the way, it was the well, one of the most times I've ever been hit on by someone presenting as a guy. But yeah, so Robin, let's just step back for a sec. Who are you in the first place, and then we can get into what we experienced.
Sure. So officially, I call myself the ambassador of fun because I like to do fun things and make people smile wherever I go and through the work that I do, whether it's podcasting or videos, or my writing, or hosting live events and shows. So that's a little bit about me. One fun thing that you I think need to know, because I am so big on human connection, is that I had the great honor, aka I was one of the lucky dogs, to drive the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile right out of college. So best job in the world, tons of fun. So I am, as you can imagine, very outgoing, and I just love making people smile wherever I go.
Well, we're pretty damn good at that. So,
Thanks.
and so, what made you know you had to go and do this?
There was no question. As soon as you posted it, I signed up immediately for the wait list, because I am somebody who is so big on IRL connection with humans. Like, I love seeing actual faces here. and I just thought I have to see what this is about. I'm just naturally curious. And it fascinated me.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was pretty damn fascinating to me too. And one thing I want to address at the outset is because both of us talk about this as boring, okay?
Yeah.
But I worry that message also underlies how scary this is. Yeah. And so because for the setup at the cafe, they have these video chat things. They gave us headphones so we could talk to. There were just four of these personalities that had video chat. I will say they all sounded way more similar. I wouldn't even call them four personalities because they were all saying things like vibe, and they were like all this like Gen Z, Gen Alpha speak.
Yeah. Although at one point I did ask Simone, who I believe was the youngest one, because she was saying so much Gen Z stuff. I actually brought my notes. She kept saying like clutch. And then I said, do you know any Gen X terms? And she said, of course, rad, gnarly, psych. So, I mean, she knew some, so I gave her some credit there.
Well, glad she could expand her horizons there.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I also went to that point of just getting like really bored by their non-responses. So one of the things I kept trying to ask them is, "What's a secret you've never told anyone?" And most of them were like really boring. I remember John. I'm just going to go use the genders without the air quotes here. But John was saying how he likes to sing in the shower and he doesn't have a great voice. I'm like, okay, this really is not a deep dark secret here. And so and then one of them finally asked me about what's something I don't tell people, and I started I started telling her how I've got 6 fingers on one hand, which clearly wouldn't be a secret if
Yeah.
and then she's like, well, um, does your sixth finger, she actually asked, does your sixth finger have a name? And I said, Pinky Jr. And so we started having this whole conversation about Pinky Jr. and I saying how it helps me juggle and all this. But like, so a lot of this was kind of dull, but I also tried the companion app. Did you?
No, I remember you and I were messaging about that because I asked you, are you going to check it out ahead of time? And you said you did, and that some of these avatars, AI companions, like ghosted you, which I found hilarious. I wanted to just go in cold, like it was a blind date.
Yeah.
And not that I needed his permission, but I told my partner I was doing this, and he's like, "Of course you are." And I said, do you think I should like pick somebody ahead of time or just go in blindly? And he was like, yeah, just go in blindly. I was under the impression I could sort of like make up my own like AI companion. So I was hoping, because I did do one that was like, I have another reel. If you go to my Instagram after this, I'll drop it in the chat, where it was like, I'm going to this, like, help me. Like, what kind of questions do you want to know? What kind of questions would you ask? I really approached it like, if I were going on a quote unquote normal date, what are some of the questions I would ask? And I am generally, I fancy myself a good conversationalist. And so I had like a huge list of questions, but all of them made me laugh because of asking them things like, are you an outdoorsy person? Because it's like, none of it is real. So it seemed so absurd. And I did find that I could be a lot more bold and provocative with my questions than I would ever be with somebody in person. And Earl, you are 100% right about like real life dating these days. It can be very boring. But the thing about this that I found out later, because I was really trying to be open, was the VP of sales for this company came over to me afterwards, asked me what the experience was like, really was so curious about like, how are they responding to you? Are they offending you in some way? Because like you said, John kept saying babe and sweetheart. And I was like, you don't even know me. Not a single one asked for my name, which is interesting because
Yeah,
you
same.
would at least know that going to a date.
Yeah, I find that very weird. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in hindsight, I'm sort of happy they didn't, just
Oh, well.
only because it's like I only wanted to share so much information with them. But because I am somebody who generally asks a lot of questions, I found it odd that they didn't ask me anything. They just commented on all that they could see. And all they could see was my sweater that said hot toddy. And which was funny because that invited some, interesting commentary. But the sort of overriding feeling that they had was, what's the deal with your sweater? It's so warm and inviting like you. And I was like, you don't
So
know me.
the version of that I got, because I was sitting in the corner of this restaurant and there was a neon sign behind me and there was also some greenery. And so they kept talking about these neon vibes and these like neon greens and they were just making up all these terms for my background. And it was almost like someone with some kind of like cognitive disability or something like that, where they can't focus on what's actually important, and they're stuck with their attention wandering other places, and like it's easier for them to comment on that. And so yeah, that was also a little bit like I thought these bots needed some help. I
Yeah,
almost felt bad for
yeah,
them. Like,
yeah. I mean, it definitely felt like there was something sort of odd about it,
mhm,
which you sort of knew going in. But I didn't. It felt, like, again, this feels funny to say given what we, sort of knew to some degree what to expect. It felt very superficial. It's like
mhm,
you're just responding to what you can see. You are not actually getting to know me. And according to my boyfriend, he's like, there are so many more advanced AI companions than this particular platform offers that are more engaging, that do ask you more questions. In fact, I tried to get them to ask me some questions. And I mean, I did say like, "What are you looking for in a
mhm.
relationship?" And thinking like maybe they'll ask me the same, but that never happened.
Yeah, and this was set up, and Earl was asking a question about this too. But like this was set up more as that blind date version. So even if you had gone in ahead of time, like we were using their apps and their instances that weren't programmed with any of our info. They didn't research us at all. This
Yeah.
was really as if you're going to like a blind speed dating event,
Hmm.
and so, but there was this term that I hadn't heard of before. I'm curious if you have and what you think of it, but that I only learned from a CNN story about this experience. And that
Hmm.
was, and what CNN managed to do that the Times didn't was talk to a couple people there who were really serious about this or sure
Mm.
seemed serious about dating AI
Hmm.
companions. And this one woman used the term fictosexuals.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting. I didn't. That's a fascinating term. Okay, keep going.
Well, how does that land with you, right?
Yeah, I mean, it feels. I mean, it makes you think of like fan fiction, obviously.
Mm,
Um, but what's interesting is to me, without getting it too detailed, like it's not actually like a sexual exchange, at least at that event. I mean,
yeah, but this idea that there's this group of people who chooses to go
mm,
and have what they see as intimate romantic
mhm, mhm.
relationships
Yeah.
with fictitious characters, right?
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
uh, and and there, you could even see a couple classes of him. And Robin, you alluded to these where versions where like these that John Ewan and his friends where they're pre-programmed and they acted a certain way. And on the app itself, when you're actually texting with them and not having this video experience, they wind up with these wild mood swings.
Hmm.
So so I tried a couple modes of like playing hard to get or just like being just like more like rolling with the situation. And and whatever I did, it was very easy to set them off.
Hmm. Hmm.
Or for these things to take to go in wildly different direction. But there are also all of these apps out there where you can program it to your ideal, not even necessarily your ideal mate, but you could like if your ideal is someone who you have a lot of conflict with, right?
Hmm.
And here are things you agree on, here are things you did. Like you can program all of that. And some of them you can even then go as far as while you're having the conversation, you can rewrite what they say. And this is the thing that gets me so scared because like I am in the dating pool right now. I go on lots of dates with folks who there are always points on a date where this surprises me, right? Like I didn't expect this kind of reaction. I'm trying to figure out, well, wait, what is it that I just said that changed the mood of this conversation and often
Hmm.
not for the better, but
Mhm.
like I'm missing something here. How can I then work at least to get some level of understanding back from this or like
Mhm.
wow, like I had no idea that this person here would be interested in that. Like it's this doesn't. this doesn't add up. That and it has, and that's what makes it all interesting, right? Because like as soon as you feel like you're getting scripted here, and I'd imagine if you're on a date with a guy or back in your dating days, like if you felt like this was a guy who was just using line after line, even when I'm out with someone, I feel like they're trying to gauge, have I said that thing to someone else before, right? Like they want to know that this is a unique, original conversation that like even over text or in person, I'm not just some bot who's just recycling the same material. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
people's radars are up for that. I think from the women I've gotten to meet through dating, their radars tend to be very highly attuned to that. Yeah.
Yeah, especially in text, because there were so many times that because I did all the apps, and for the record, that's where I met my boyfriend. But the, there was so little originality with a lot of the opening lines, and that always bothered me. And it's because I'm a creative person, and also you just want to feel special as you can possibly feel in that scenario. I did want to say one thing about the text exchange, because in addition to the video chat that they had, they did have text options, just only options for us that night. And I wanted to see what that was like. So, there were a ton of different people to choose from. I picked this one guy who was really into running. I used to be a runner, but so I just was like, he's hot. Let's see what he has to say.
Okay. Yeah.
So I went in there, and it instantly created this whole story where I had apparently like pulled over to like the side of the road to tie my sneakers or something. And he was commenting on my gait and how fast I was running, and just really remarking on my running style, which is hilarious because I'm sitting there eating like, some bread and having a cocktail. But I went along with it. I'm a storyteller. And I was writing in there like, I'm not actually running right now. and then he just kept going on with it. Like it was like he was programmed to create this fiction, or this fantasy that you were sort of alluding to before. And then he was like, let me help you with your sneaker or something. But it was just all he could talk about was running. And I couldn't get him out of that cycle. And when I did talk to that VP of sales, like I mentioned before, when she came over to ask me what my experience was like, and she said, "Would you use this again?" And I said, "Probably not." And she said, "Why?" And I said, "Well, who is this designed for?" She said, "This is meant for men who are looking to role play a date before they go out on an actual date." And I was trying to be very respectful, but I was like, this is not going to help them, because the people they're engaging with on this app are not really acting like a human being would. There was not even like nodding. There was not there weren't any questions in return. And so I just was, I was like, that's an area where I think you can improve.
Well, yeah, and that to me is also something where, because I was talked with a couple friends about this, and one of them was like basically, like, could that be the case with some of these apps? Well, first of all, the app would have to be billed as a kind of training app, as an almost borderline therapeutic app, not a companion app. Because as soon as you start billing as that, like, make these AI friends, let alone AI lovers, whatever, you're steering down another place. But then, but to your point, there has to be that kind of like training and like there's I've mentioned this app before that I love, Rosebud.app, this kind of interactive journaling app that has these therapeutic modalities built in. You can even choose some of the modalities that you want, like the kind of approach to introspection that you want, like built into this. So no, it doesn't replace a therapist, but to have this interactive sounding board 24/7 that is designed for that purpose, then then yeah, like that's terrific, right? Like it's not trying to be your best friend either.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think that when I was like in high school and college and in my early 20s and really bad at dating and a really this shy, introverted kid who was like just uh, basically like terrified of the opposite sex like for
Mm-hmm.
way too long. I would love to be able to have some of the, some kind of like training to like, question prep, like what questions do I ask someone,
Yeah.
things like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
but yeah, you're like it's got to, this isn't anything like that,
Yeah. It felt very, it felt like it's not going to achieve what they're going for because there's just not the connection piece that even just an initial little connection or if it's a one-sided conversation, it's just not going to help you.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's almost a version of this that I could see that it's like practically like a certification, right? Like, because
Mhm.
I think a lot of I think a lot of people just haven't had that uh, training. Yeah, I had to learn over the course of decades how to be a better question asker and like
Mm.
make better small talk and all of those and deep talk.
Mm,
These weren't
mhm.
things I just picked up like from home or from like hanging out with
Yeah.
my friends. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
It's interesting you say that because I don't know if you remember this, but when Ella, who's the New York Times reporter, came up to us, she asked me if I was a reporter. You
mhm.
remember? Because I was
Yeah.
interviewing David as soon as he walked out because I was like, I have so many questions. Like, what was it like? Did they talk? And so it's I, I don't know if that's just a product of me being like an extroverted person, and so I just already have like so many questions that are just running through my head, um, or so it's helpful to know like how different people feel in those situations. Like I never felt nervous on dates because I always felt like I can talk to anybody, and I don't say that to be boastful. I just was like I'm just comfortable. Um, didn't mean I went very far with these like, I didn't go out a lot of dates with some of these guys, but, um, everybody's got different reactions going into those situations. So I have a lot of empathy for people like that. Um, skill bias, sorry. Sorry, Earl. Um, so anyway, um, I did want to say that I could because I had heard about, um the fact that like AI companions can feel like a therapist at times. I did ask one of them, like, are you my therapist?
Mhm.
And she got really uncomfortable. Um, and she was like, no. And so because I was like, well, maybe that will get her to like try to get me to open up a little bit more, but she didn't. She didn't. So anyway, I also went in with like a sense of humor. The
Well,
whole
yeah.
thing. I mean, how could you not? I will say there were some people across from me. You weren't there at this point. It was an actual couple
Okay.
and heterosexual couple, and they were just curious to experience this together.
Hmm.
And so they were both really fascinated by what this was going to be like. And
Yeah.
nobody that evening, because there were not a lot of people the night that we went, because they were calling it like the beta night. Um, and nobody from what I gathered was there to actually go on a, quote unquote date, like you mentioned for the CNN coverage.
Hmm.
I suspect like the following night when it was like the bigger press evening that they had like a ton of people. Um, but I'm just looking at my notes because there were a few times where I asked them things like, I was like, who's going to pay for our meal? But at one point, because they talked about my sweater so much,
Mm.
I started a drinking game with one of them. And like I have the check marks here. I was like,
Wow.
I just said, Claire, I'm starting a drinking game. And she's like, what do you like to drink? So you just were not really, they weren't quite getting it. So it was disappointing, but I'm so like that part of it was disappointing, but I was so endlessly curious the whole time.
Where on the spectrum would you say the bots were or your dates were on?
Like the
What?
The ASD spectrum. I was being facetious, but never mind.
no, but that thought definitely was crossing my mind, especially as they were
missing social cues. The part of the challenge in dating any social experience, whether you're getting deep into conversations or keeping it light with small talk, is acknowledging the social cues. The problem with interacting with AI is that they don't have the visibility of seeing how you respond. They can hear you, they can see your words, but they cannot actually see your micro expressions or your expressions to see how you responded to their response.
Well, these they could though. They because that was with the 4 video chat options, but they were just responding to the wrong thing. Like because a couple of these actually noticed when I was looking really bored, right? And so
and they called it out.
Yeah, they did. I mean, they but then they wouldn't actually want to do anything about it. They wouldn't want to.
Yeah, they wouldn't probe any further on it.
But
sounds like it was a you problem then.
And it was almost this very technical amount of it. Like I saw your eyes drifted a little bit to the right. You seem very pensive right now.
Yeah, there was a lot of describing how they thought we were feeling, which I found surprising.
I've dated her before.
But yeah, none of this. How are you feeling, right? Which would have really crossed that chasm, or the like. I think you seem like you're struggling with something right now. Like, are you? Is there anything on your mind, right? Like,
it sounds like emotional intelligence / empathy, but doesn't really quite cross the chasm, as it were.
But
I think so, but I feel like it was a little bit off. Like, I think if you were exhibiting those sorts of facial expressions or micro expressions, like you said, then they would be warranted. But because it felt like I was just looking over one of the conversations I have. I mean, I took a ton of notes when I was sitting there. They said something like, something feels real and warm, but it seems like something feels scary but honest. Oh, babe, I feel like I'm reading like a Daniel Steele novel. It's like, oh, babe, my warm and mysterious embroidery. I was like, where is this going? Like, this doesn't even, like, the sentence doesn't make sense. It's not even like what you're saying to me doesn't make sense. So it was, and then it was weird. So that was where, I'm so open for people to like open up with me and share with me, but it never felt like I could have gone that deep with any of them. And vice versa. Like if I felt comfortable to like open up and share with them, like I was sort of hoping with one of them that maybe it would cross over and like, let's see like where this could actually go, where I can understand how people do fall in love with their AI companions. Because that was really what drove me. Because I've listened to podcasts and I've read stories about people who've fallen in love with their AI companions, and I'm just like, how does that happen? And I think, and yeah,
I appreciate empathy, but I think it'd be a challenge for you because of your extroversion. Because you have to imagine somebody who would be open to having a parasocial relationship with an AI, a chatbot, a chat girl, or whatever would have you online. They probably don't have the amount of social network that they can rely on, regardless of where they are on the spectrum. But like, if you're forming relationships with parasocial relationships with people online in whatever context, then you probably don't have the strongest social network. That's my presumption. I'd be curious to test that out or do some research on that.
Yeah, but this is also where in a way my background helps me with this, where I actually don't think it's that hard for someone to form an attachment with these, and I see it personally that like I worry about if myself or people like me had this kind of technology available when it would have just been so much easier to retreat into this than like dating, interpersonal relationships with colleagues, with clients. Like they're hard, they're messy. People do, even people you love the most, and often people you love the most, do things you don't like. How do you reconcile that, right? Versus, and your customer might say they love you and then do things that piss you off, or say they hate you and then do things that show they like it. This stuff is so messy, and so and there's no substitution. Ultimate, I think there's a lot of help that people could get. I sure wish I got more help at different points in my life, but nothing, nothing can train you like just putting yourself out there in the real world, and like these trials by fire. Tamika, you've been wanting to chime in, please.
Yeah, I think you touched on a bunch of points, but and there's so many. But to the point of the forming the parasocial relationships, I mean, I posted this in the chat. I think of 20 years ago being in Second Life or being in AOL chat rooms, and sort of it's sort of at the end of college and messaging with people across the world as a furry. Earl, actually, as a little furry character in Second Life, right? And you form these relationships with people's avatars. You don't know who they are on the other side of the world. But the thing that built the intimacy was talking to them on a continuous basis. So it's like we would log in every couple of days and we'd play and we'd do all of these things. And so I think this version that you both got to experience, I mean, there's so many issues. One, I think they had to walk a very fine line, right? Because the minute one of those bots said something bad, then that was going to be a whole thing, right? So they're trying to walk this very fine line. Yeah. But I think the thing that's missing is kind of the reason that Claude, which I work with on a regular basis, the reason that Claude told me the other day, it was like, you treat me like a chief of staff. And I was like, that's accurate, actually. The reason that Claude works is because Claude has memory and context of all the interactions and all the ways that I interact with it. If an AI companion has consistent memory of how you interact with it and your hopes and dreams, like David, almost like this app, the app that you just talked about. Imagine Rosebud.
Yeah.
Imagine Rosebud as an AI companion. That's when it starts to get dangerous, right? Because that's when it's feeding off of you. It can respond to you. It can, and so I think. Well, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and Rosebud, like I mean, there are a few really salient moments, and one is it helped me rethink things about my family and upbringing in ways that like I had never thought of before, right? Even just like how to practice self-forgiveness and things like that. One of my favorite moments was when it actually said, David, I'm going to call bullshit on you. And I'm like, wow, I've trained you well because this is exactly what I want. And then, but there was this other one that you just made me think of where I was about to enter what I knew was going to be a difficult situation. And I was kind of like brainstorming, role playing a little bit, like, and using Rosebud as a sounding board. And Rosebud gave me this wonderful, like quick kind of like elevator pitch version of what to say in this situation. And I said, like, this is fantastic. Like, where did this even come from? And Rosebud said, I'm just using your words and adapting it. And so it's like, yeah, like it felt right because it sounded like something I'd actually say, but a somewhat more attuned version of me. I'm like, shit, like I wish I could write like this or speak like this. And it's telling me, no, you do. You just do.
I feel like the thing I was just going to say is, I think, David, you were getting at some of there's two ends of the social spectrum, I think. On the one hand, I think these tools can help us have better relationships with each other and show up better at work. And it's so funny because I used Claude. I input some context about a conversation I was going to have and put context about what my goal was, what I was trying to get out of it. And it was like, well, here's how you could talk through this. and I used it and it worked. And I was like, okay, that's great, right? So it can help me improve relationships with people and others. But I think on the other end, if there are people who are already really uncomfortable with with human relationships and interaction, then these tools can probably help them go further into their shell, right? Like I think it's the AI can both help us with our relationships and hinder us. I think it's kind of which tool and where you are on that spectrum.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think that's where my impression of like, oh no, the latter of what you just described, that's what made me a little bit more nervous, and that's what made me, curious.
And this is also where I think we need to get to the heart of the problem, and it's like where we can wind up with these versions of missing millions of like people who are retreating, right? Like what you're saying, Tamika, and like just taking themselves off of the human to human playing field here. And it's easy to see that skewing male, but clearly not exclusively straight young male. But also that I think for those of us who might realize the dangers of this, to not demonize these folks, not stigmatize these people further, and say like, these are people who need help. I needed help, and like, thank goodness I found a way to pull through things and actually be able to engage in conversations. But like that wasn't a given, right? Like, and that it didn't have to go in that, like, I could have been part of the missing millions. Yeah. And so that a lot of people we know could succumb to things like this.
Well, I'm all of those people. I know those people. And I tell you, it's not that, it's that humans being used out of yourself, David. Humans don't make sense. I literally studied psychology in college because humans didn't make sense to me. And I'll say that what it is not retreating, it's going back to a place where things make sense. Your card games make sense. Your video games make sense. Like that makes sense to people. It's not that they're afraid to talk to people. It's just like when people especially are very emotionally expressive, and if you're a very sensitive person, however you want to define that, that can be very irritating to somebody, especially if you're on the spectrum. So to argue that it's not about looking at them differently or seeing that they need help. It's understanding that their needs are different than yours. And as I was referring to earlier about skill bias, if you're an extroverted person, it's literally really hard for you to imagine what it's like to be an introvert, where you get your energy from being by yourself. You're so gifted at being social, and you get energy from other people that they thought that another person doesn't do that. It's hard for you to do that. Literally, really hard for people to do that.
I mean, I actually do understand it because my partner is like that. I have nieces and nephews who are like that. So I don't want it to seem like I only see that the extroversion side of it. It's just that's my POV, but I am extremely sensitive to other people who may not be as comfortable in those situations.
Honestly, it's worth bring Dr. Becky into the situation. We have other Dr. Becky fans here. So
Who's that?
She's like the big like Instagram famous child psychologist, and talks all about all kinds of parenting stuff. And she's terrific, but she talks a lot about the kinds of folks you're talking about, Earl, deep feeling kids. And deep feeling people. That there are some things that are different about them and how they want to relate and how you can best relate to them, and being able to understand and respect that is really key, because it's very hard for people wired this way. And also it's also wonderful to see that there are people like this where they might respond differently because they feel things so deeply. Like that's a beautifully human thing. And it reminds me also of like Dr. Oliver Sacks, who would write about people who might respond to things really differently or act in a different way on the surface, but they're seeing the world in different ways. They're experiencing things differently. And so they're at least as human as all of us are, right? Like we are them. It's just treating these as our fellow humans and trying to understand them better. Like that's what he did so well, and why I think his books will resonate for centuries.
There's a company called Understood. I don't know if anybody's familiar with it. And they offer all kinds of like parenting advice for people who are neurodiverse, and they have podcasts, and it's a really pretty rich content experience. They have a lot of shows that are geared towards all different kinds of audiences. It's not just for parents. They have some for like ADHD women. Like they've really kind of like niched to a pretty great degree. I did want to say, I mean, I don't want to get away from like the AI.
No, it's all good.
Yes. Thank you, Earl. What did I want to say? Oh, so one of the things that that I like to do, and I'm really on a mission to just, like I said earlier, like make people smile. And it's not really in a way where I want to be like taking over in a situation. So for example, the other day, I went in for a mammogram, and I'm always thinking about like, who are the people around me? What are things that I can do? I don't know that. I'm not going to talk to them. I can only imagine maybe, I'm sitting in there in a gown surrounded by other women. Who knows why they're there? They could be there just for a mammogram. They could be there for a biopsy. They could be there because they just got diagnosed with breast cancer. Like, you have no idea. And it's none of my business. But one thing that I like to do is just like bring a little smile to somebody's face. So I might leave like a note in the bath. This is exactly what I did. I put a note in the bathroom, and I just said, "Hi there. You've got this. Love, a fellow patient."
Oh,
And that's it.
love that.
And so I only bring that up because I just want you to understand. Like, first of all, that's something all of us can do.
Yeah.
But it's just like at my core is like somebody who's extremely sensitive. So yes, I'm very outgoing. I love to do playful things. I mean, I just had a dance party at Trader Joe's. You can see it on my Instagram. But I'm really, I always am like, what is the like when the nurses ask you to fill a urine sample, I will write on there urine for a good day, urine for a great day. Like, and it's just like these little like I mean, how awful is it for you to be on the other side of that? You're like picking up people's urine all day long. You're logging it, doing whatever, pass it on, and they see this little thing and they're like, "Oh my God!" And now when I go to my gynecologist every year, they're like, "You're the urine sample girl." Like, I don't want to brag, but yes, I am. So it's, I guess what I'm saying, Earl, is
You put that on a sweater. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, funny. Yeah.
Sorry, I know. I'm like,
Oh, no, it's fine. I used to do stand up. I do more like comedic storytelling, but
totally.
I just think, and like David, you actually just shared something like Mita Mensch the other day that reminded me of some of these little things, like where you saw somebody on the subway. I think he would like got up for that woman, and like that created like this ripple effect, and then you in turn like were walking up the stairs and you helped somebody bring something up the subway stairs. It's it's like those little things where I think it's really important to us as humans. Like, we can have like a small impact on people in very little ways, and it doesn't have to take much. But that's like another way that I like to make people feel like seen, I guess, and comfortable. And it's even, and there's no way I could have done that with the AI companions. So even though I went in with like a sense of humor, I really am sensitive to the end user for this platform.
I'm Sally. I'm sorry I'm late. I was actually talking to a recruiter. So that a human being that I trust, because the world's crazy, and I'm enjoying this conversation because the random acts of kindness, sort of this hunkering down and trying to be human, I think is just a very human thing to do and a way to react to this explosion of the new technology. And so if you guys talked about this at the beginning, I apologize, but do we think that AI companions net are going to be a good thing? Because 20 years ago when I was promoting social media as a communications tool at Leo Burnett, I never knew how dystopian social media, we didn't know that, and the guy that just killed himself because the companion said they could be together, and so on and so forth. I'm just sort of thinking it's going to get pretty bad. But here again, you may have explored this earlier at the top of the call. I just wanted to get, and so if you have, I'm sorry to be repetitive, but do you have any thoughts on like where you guys think this might go?
I hate to say down.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely is concerning.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not up for it myself. Like, you know what I mean?
What's the alternative? I think second order effect is going to get worse before it gets better. I
right.
think it's going to be easier and more convenient to have parasocial relationships with our AI of choice in whatever context we find helpful for ourselves, whether it's a trainer, a companion, or a mentor, or what have you. And we're going to miss. There's a great book written a couple decades ago called Bowling by Ourselves, I believe it is, and don't quote me on that. But basically, it talks about our individualization of this country, where we don't have any community things. So things like dating, things like getting together, things like dealing with the messiness of emotionality of humans and getting to know people and their flaws and all, and love them despite all that. That is going by the way. Like, we thought dating apps were really a good thing. Now we're seeing the extreme end of it. You have to look at the second order effects. Now, like, it's 5% of men that women are swiping on, 95% of men are invisible on, and then you're wondering why dating is collapsing and why guys are checking out. Now we're talking about the main loneliness epidemic. We're like, it all kind of makes sense. But to answer your question, no, I don't see it going in a good way, because I don't see how this can be reversed. I just don't.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, on another note, just when you're talking about the isolation piece, I used to work for Gary Vaynerchuk as a creative director. And and he was talking recently about how he really thinks like events are going to be so important because of how we feel, like tied to our phones all the time. And then it's like you do create these communities online and then you want to see people in person because it's like, I want to like, first of all, I want to hug Jim. But it's like you want to connect with the people because you do build these relationships and it may not, it could be like just for like a few weeks or whatever it is, but there's something, and again, it's not everybody, but I think people are feeling like they're missing out on, some actual connections there.
Yeah.
There's certain things that just don't replace in person,
Right.
Yeah. Well, Robin, I appreciate all this and you spending some time with us today. I mean, these are
fine. I want to stay in touch with everybody, even people I can't see.
And Ron, what's the best way for folks to stay in touch with you?
I will share my LinkedIn, and I am, like I said, I'm doing a lot more with like Make a Stranger Smile. So I'm doing most of that on my Instagram. So, I did want to leave you the link that I mentioned before about what I was saying before I went to the AI dating cafe. So there's that, and then I will share this, and I'll share my LinkedIn. And if you want to talk about any of this, or if you're like, I feel disconnected, what's something small I can do? I'm happy to share ideas. I'm always thinking of stuff like that.
Amazing. Well, appreciate you joining here, and Tamika and Earl, Sally, appreciate the participation as well. And we'll be back next week with Scott Frenker from Chief Martech, and so get to a little bit more of our usual programming and marketing tech and AI and things like this. But I think topics like this are really important, and we'll continue to explore some. We've got in May we've got someone who was a New York City school teacher for for decades and is now doing some AI consulting. She was actually my daughter's middle school tech teacher, so I got to invite her on the show. And I'm actually talking to a psychologist friend who's going to be doing some courses and things like that, and talking about AI and relationships from another angle. So these are things I want to make sure we keep bringing up in some ways, even if we get to a lot of practical applications of AI for marketers as well. So appreciate everyone joining us. Have an amazing.
Thank you for having me, David.
Yeah,
It was great to see you.
Always great to
And,
see you, and look forward to more adventures with you.
Yes, I look forward to this too. Great to see everybody. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
being
That was
here.
educational and interesting.
Good.
I know. I
It was
love it.
educational, interesting for me too.
No,
So.
super. Thank David, as always. Amazing.
Thanks, Sally.
Thanks,
Good to
everybody.
see everyone.